As many of you may know, the stars don't lie, but people do.
Today, we'll be analyzing the birth chart of Bryan Kohberger through the lens of Vedic astrology. We'll tell you what we see in his chart and go over the planetary transits which were operating at the moment of the crimes he committed. In this video, we're going to cover many interesting points, including how the dark side of Libra just might hold the key to understanding this killer's true motive in this situation. Before we dive in, be sure to check out our new focus reading. If you've ever wanted us to directly look at one specific question or theme in your life without booking a full consultation, this is for you. Just follow the link in the description below of this video and you can reserve your spot today. So for Bryan Kohberger, we do not have an exact birth time. So we're going to be looking at his chart from the moon. And since the moon is not on the cusp of any sign, we can be certain that his moon is placed in Gemini. So reading his birth chart from the moon should be very reliable in this case.
So it looks like we can be fairly certain that Mars is the Atma Karaka in his chart. So when we use any Jaimini astrology techniques, such as reading his chart from the Karakamsha Lagna, they should be reliable as well.
So the first thing we see is that Bryan's moon is placed in the sign of Gemini, which is a dual sign ruled by the intelligent and calculating planet Mercury. And it's also in the nakshatra Ardra. Ardra is referred to as a Tikshna nakshatra, which literally means sharp, severe, or poisonous. It is symbolized by a teardrop. And that can be related to themes of extreme disappointment, which manifests as an outburst of rage and destruction.
The second thing we notice is Mars debilitated in the second house in the sign of Cancer. Mars at 29.5 degrees here is further agitated by its position in the final degree of the sign of Cancer, which is also a Gandanta point and a Sarpa Drekkana. All of these factors signify intense karmic struggles with matters signified by Mars in his chart.
Mars is also in the nakshatra Ashlesha, another severe nakshatra associated with deception and violence. Mars in this position can show us that he may have experienced intense issues early in his childhood, which may have even included violence. These issues likely resulted in a strained relationship with his father, and he may have harbored a lot of hidden resentment for his father. The second house also represents the face. Benefic planets placed well in the second house usually indicate an attractive or aesthetically pleasing face. Malefic planets in a poor condition usually indicate the opposite.
Mars here also suggests he would have a very hard time being able to fulfill his desires, since Mars in his chart is the 11th lord. This is further evidenced by the placement of Ketu, the planet which forces us to be detached from things, in his 11th house of desires, network circles, and social media, which is also aspected by Saturn, the planet of delays and denial.
Saturn is, however, in his Multracone sign of Aquarius in his main birth chart and in his own sign of Capricorn in the Navamsha, giving him the ability to be, for the most part, structured in his endeavors. However, this position also signifies general bad luck in his lifetime, which could be another source of resentment building under the surface. Next, we see that his Lagna Lord Mercury is going into the 5th house in the sign of Libra. This shows an inclination towards learning and education, as well as a strong desire to be published. Mercury is sitting here with Venus, and they are both getting afflicted by the Rahu-Ketu axis. And they're aspected by Mars and trine from Saturn. Rahu-Venus conjunction in this case can indicate addiction to substances or a sexual obsession or fantasies.
So this is a point where we can kind of talk about the dark side of the sign of Libra. The sign of Libra in many ways can make a person look at the world like an equation. So the way that they can sometimes think, especially if Libra is very afflicted in their chart, is that if they do their part, then it's only fair for them to get what they want in return. And so what they often don't realize is that the world doesn't really work that way. So in his life, it seems to be the case that he finally developed the willpower to try to better himself. And Rahu in the 5th house conjunct Venus is giving him an obsession with trying to fulfill his sexual desires through dating. So this is that equation that we're talking about with Libra, where he thinks he's doing his part.
Right.
If I better myself in all these ways, now I'll be able to fulfill my desires.
Right.
I'll be able to fulfill my sexual
with
fantasies.
certainty.
Yeah. But what he's leaving out is that there's a delusion being created by Rahu where that might not ever be able to happen, or that might not be able to happen in the way that he wants it to. So when the crime took place, he was actually in his Rahu sub-period as well. Rahu periods are known to make you feel like you have to fulfill your desires by any means necessary, almost like you're possessed. So this thing that can happen with the dark side of Libra is that the perceived unfairness, where they're doing their part, but all of a sudden they realize they're not going to get what they expected in return. That balance is not going to be equal in their own mind. Is that perceived unfairness triggers a rage. And another factor at play here is that he's in Vimshotri Dasha, he's in the sub-period of Rahu, which is in Libra. And in Yogini Dasha, he's in the major and sub-period of the Rahu major period, Rahu sub-period. So that's also placed in the sign of Libra. So all of these negative Libra tendencies are coming out for sure at this moment.
So finally, if we look at Jupiter and Sun, they are closely conjunct in the 6th house in the sign of Scorpio, in another Sarpa Drekkana. This reveals ego and confidence related issues, which reduce his overall ability to judge right from wrong and have any kind of normal moral compass. Jupiter is also the 7th lord of relationships and is placed in the 6th house of enemies, showing that for him, pursuing relationships will end up typically leading to fights, conflicts, and potentially litigations. Jupiter in the 6th house also aspects the 12th house of sexual pleasure, which can suppress a person's ability to fulfill their sexual desires, again creating frustration.
If we look at this same position using Jaimini astrology techniques, Jupiter is his Dara Karaka, or significator of relationships, conjunct his Gyati Karaka, or significator of enemies. And they are both receiving sign aspects from the violent and explosive Mars and Ketu.
Another interesting point to note from the Jaimini perspective is that Venus is in a mutual aspect with Mars in the Navamsha chart, which is a combination known to produce uncontrollable lust and violent sexual tendencies. Jeffrey Epstein and Bill Clinton both have this same combination in their charts in one way or the other. Now we're going to look at the transits that were taking place during that night when the crime was committed. So we have the time of 4:13 a.m. on November 13th. One thing we notice immediately is the moon's placement in Punarvasu nakshatra. Punarvasu is not usually considered to be a harsh nakshatra, but we personally have found it to be in many cases. It is symbolized by an arrow ready to be launched from a bow, and it can signify the launching of an attack.
Mars at this moment had just entered the sign of his natal moon, triggering his thoughts of aggression and violence. Rahu was transiting over his Ketu in the 11th house almost in the same degree, and Ketu was transiting over his Rahu in the 5th house with the Sun and Mercury. This can show that the illusions of his natal Rahu placement were burned, exposing a truth which his ego was not able to tolerate. Just 5 days before this happened, on November 8th, 2022, a full lunar eclipse took place with the moon conjunct Rahu in his 11th house in the impulsive and aggressive sign of Aries. This was likely the time that he solidified his decision to carry out the crime.
Venus at this time had recently entered his 6th house, inclining him to perceive women as his enemies. And Saturn was transiting his 8th house of death, secrets, scandals, humiliation, and sudden transformation, showing that there would be some karma related to these matters at this time. This could mean that there was not just rejection involved in this particular situation, but maybe also the threat of a scandal or some embarrassment, which added to his rage and his feeling that he needed to seek some sort of retribution. So there you have it. This was our analysis of Bryan Kohberger's birth chart. Be sure to subscribe to our channel if you have not yet already, and check out our brand new focused reading if you haven't gotten a reading from us yet. The link is in the description of this video. Thank you for watching.